whistle to end another thunderous final. Mean absolutely everything. 6-star Toulouse.
Amazing achievement, and it goes from Hastroy. La Rochelle, Heineken Cup champions once again.
Vincent Cork tries to find touch, does. It's a third win for Saracens. Saracens European champions.
Exhibit, double World Cup winner, and now with the Sharks, 2024 Challenge Cup champions.
We've got a special show today. It's Investec Champions Cup, EPCR. We've got two main men here. Got Raynaud. That's not the referee, by the way. He is the CEO of the EPCR. We've got the chairman, Mr. Dominic McKay. Short spell at Celtic, one of our favourite soccer teams, but also formerly URC and also the Scottish Rugby Union. They're going to talk to us about the Champions Cup, the EPCR, the Challenge Cup, South African teams being up north. They're also going to speak to El Presidento, Mark Alexander, about the cash. Where's the cash for South Africa? So, gents, here's the cash.
Mate, really nice to see you. Thank you for having us.
Good. Great. It's great to have you guys here. So many questions about the Champions Cup. Context from a South African point of view. We love the competition. We've had so many South African players play in the competition. Goes back 30 years. The great Toulon side won 3 in a row, led by that giant Bakkies Botha. Bernard Laporte said he was the best rugby player he's ever coached. Brian Abada had a stint there. Obviously, Joe Fanico went there, reinvented his career, and was superb. And John Smith went there, had a spell. We've got Donny Rousseau. We've had so many good players play there. Then Sarries, we had the Sarries boys. When they won, they were successful. We go back to the early 2000s. Trevor Holstead played there for Munster. There's always been this love for the Champions Cup, this love for Toulouse, for Leinster. And one of the big things when we were playing in Super Rugby was, you know how cool it would be for Leinster to play the Bulls? You know how cool it would be for the Stormers to play Toulouse? Now it's happening, and it's not quite as cool as everyone thought because of the travel, aligning it with the URC Champions Cup, Challenge Cup. Whoever wants to go first, Jacques or Dominic, where's your biggest challenge been in terms of merging the Southern Hemisphere into what was known as Europe's finest tournaments?
Well, firstly, thank you for having us. What an introduction. It is a fantastic competition, and it's got 30 years of incredible rich heritage, as you've just said there. And embedded in that heritage is some incredible South African superstars who have made a real name for themselves in the Northern Hemisphere as a consequence of being part of these wonderful historic European clubs. But the evolution of that has been to welcome the South African clubs into the Investec Champions Cup and the EPCR Challenge Cup in the last 2 seasons. And they've competed brilliantly. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge for those South African clubs to pit themselves against the world's greatest clubs. And those world's greatest clubs are in our competition. There's no question about that. We've got the greatest clubs in France, the greatest clubs in England, the greatest clubs in URC, that of course includes those South Africans. So the first challenge, way beyond logistics and travel and all that sort of good stuff, is can you play against the very best in France? Can you play against the very best in England? Can you play against the very best in URC? We talk about it because the players tell us this. It is test match rugby in club colours, and it really is. The quality and the intensity of a Champions Cup game is extraordinary. I've had the pleasure, and I'm sure you have as well, of going to a number of Champions Cup games over the last number of years. I've grown up with the Champions Cup, and the passion in the stadium is incredible, but the passion on the field is outstanding. Our last finals, we had our final last year in Tottenham, which was incredible. Wonderful stadium, $1 billion stadium, sold out, 2 incredible teams going head to head, and a greater game of rugby I probably have never seen. The standard, the quality of the play was absolutely exceptional, and it was befitting that an incredible final was in an incredible stadium. And I think that's the magic of the Champions Cup, is you bring together these incredible teams, great players, fabulous rivalries in beautiful, iconic locations for the semis and for the finals. And with the South African teams joining, it has made such a difference. And I had the joy of presenting, as Jacques did last year, Ebenetebes with the Challenge Cup trophy. And I know there was a bit of redemption there for the Sharks as they had a tough season in URC, but to work their way through the hard yards of the Challenge Cup to get into the final and to receive the competition and to win is just exceptional, but it's hard. So your first question was, what does it mean? It means if you want to be the best, you have to play against the best and you have to compete consistently.
And look at the stats. In the first year, two teams won in the last 8 of the Investec Champions Cup. In the second year, the South African franchise won the first European trophy ever. Okay, so history can be written. It's for the teams now to go for it for the big one.
I think also if we look at Zels will come in, I know you want to talk about the broadcasting and kind of the appeals and that kind of stuff, but you talk about the Sharks and the fact that they had struggled in the URC, they weren't in the playoffs, and they could put the contingent of 7 current Springboks into that campaign, the back end of it. And the team they took to the final to play Gloucester was the best team they could put in with 5-6 World Cup starting Springboks, which just added to the appeal of the occasion. But also, one of the things that the South African teams are struggling with, and Leo Cullen, the Leinster director, rightly said that would be their biggest challenge, was aligning 2 big competitions, URC Champions Cup or Challenge Cup, and how do they build depth in those squads so they can be competitive in both. And we look at a Leinster, probably outside of Toulouse, the most competitive, strongest squad in world rugby when it comes to club rugby. It's just a test team. And they haven't won the URC in 3 seasons, and they haven't won the Champions Cup in 3 seasons. But they've got.
There were 3 times in the final.
They've got finals, and they've got 3 semi-finals and hosting them in URC. So his thing was to balance it which makes any team who gets the double. So Toulouse last year, such an incredible thing. What is the solution if there's one to that? To the 2 competitions running concurrently, confusion that there is in that, and how do we eradicate it?
I think there's 2 things. So in Europe, it's had 30 years of history, the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup. So it's well established and well understood by rugby supporters and broadcasters and fans. And we're on a journey just now in South Africa, absolutely, as we were on a journey with URC. A few years ago, when URC welcomed in those first South African teams, it takes a little bit of time for the rugby public to get full understanding of how those competitions can work together and the importance of those competitions. In Europe, there's a recognition that if you want to chase the star, if you want to chase that symbol to be the Champions Cup winner, you've got to work incredibly hard in the competition, but you also have to be strong and successful in your domestic competition. And we have 3 leagues that feed into the Champions and the Challenge Cup. So we're represented within EPCR by the top 14 in France, by the URC, and by PRL. And the champions of those competitions have to fight on 2 fronts. And that fighting on 2 fronts can be, of course, a challenge. But what we've seen over the last number of years is that South African teams can do that, as the Sharks have demonstrated. But it is tough. It's a challenging competition. And if you want to be regarded as the strongest team in the world or the strongest team in Europe, you have to make sure that you've got the best possible squad mix to fight on both those fronts. And one of the things that we, I guess, and Jacques and his team do is work really closely with our friends at URC to make sure that the planning, the logistics, the scheduling, the fixtures are as complementary to both competitions as possible to give the players and the coaches the best chance for success. And that's in constant evolution. That's constantly being worked at. And the teams are working hand in glove in trying to make sure that those logistics and those plans can be as easy for the players as possible. But what we've seen, and Jacques can give you an example of that, the quality of the teams coming out of South Africa, their contribution, both on the field, but also off the field, that cultural exchange that we spoke about just off camera is massively important for our competition.
And maybe you could talk more about that.
So, remember when we came out here the first time to South Africa in 22-23, no Northern team had won on South African soil. We came back the season after that, and we saw, I think, the last kick of La Rochelle in the round of 16 against the Stormers. We were up there instead. By the time we went to the pitch, they had kicked. So it became, it was also this. Wow, it's so difficult for us in the north to play them at home. in their home turf. It's, the travel and the altitude and the physicality and the crowds. But now, look, Toulouse won, Northampton won. Toulon won. So, they have upped their game, just as the South Africans have upped their game and have gone into the top 8 and have won, the Challenge Cup final. So this is the beauty of the competition. Everyone's learning, okay? And everyone's learning also to manage 2 competitions at the same time. Toulouse is playing a very tough top 14 with 28 match days and are going deep and have won the Investec Champions Cup and the double last year. So it is possible. There's just a learning curve. And as Dom said, it is the toughest club competition in the world. So you need to have the best squad, you need to have the best management, you need to have the best physical and physio preparation, you probably need to have the best mental elements. So there are puzzles, but it's possible. All club rugby teams are playing at least 1 domestic, if not 2 domestic competition, and an intercontinental competition as the Investec Champions Cup or the Challenge Cup. So it is incredibly hard, but they're all doing it, so they're all at the same starting point. And some people get the double, others are just missing this last step, and others are again, you cannot imagine how impressed the observers were in the north when the Hollywood Sharks won in their second year participation, the European EPCR Challenge Cup. It is really an impressive feat because of how hard it is, and it wasn't like they had a great domestic championship go that year.
Yeah. How do you negate the balancing of the 2 competitions and obviously the history, and we saw the Leinster guys chasing the 5th star. That became post the World Cup when they had the disappointment there. And that's the big thing. And the South Africans don't know talk of the star and the meaning of the star. But how do you negate where squad and player welfare comes into it, and a weakened side is sent on an away game, and someone thinks they may be getting the top team and they don't get the top team, they get the reserve depth because there's another competition that they actually may have a primary focus in, or even the round robin. If we've seen some teams lose to in the beginning, they go back to their domestic competition.
Yeah, I'll make a brief comment on that. I mean, there's 30 years of rich history of clubs fielding their best teams in the competition. We have got a bit of a journey, I think, particularly with South Africa, to allow them to make sure that they can make the right decisions in terms of where they put their focus and attention on the domestic versus the Champions Cup. And that's a little bit of an educational piece for sure. In Europe, there is no question the best teams field their best players because they want to go and chase that star. But there's compromises, of course, during the season that head coaches and directors of rugby have to make. We're very committed to making sure we bring together the best clubs and the best players. And if we feel that's not happening in a way, then we're pretty clear about having those conversations with clubs and with the unions to make sure that they are supporting the tournament and the tournaments as best they possibly can. But as I say, we've had an incredible rich history of the best players being in that tournament. But there'll be ups and downs naturally as people have a natural focus on the domestic competition depending on the views of the director of rugby at a given time.
If I can add, beyond history of chasing the stars, and it's so important, look at the stars at 3 stars in Toulouse and 6 stars in Toulouse, or Leinster with their 4 chasing their 5th and having lost 3 finals. Statistically, when you look at statistically, you have the more players you rotate, the lower your ranking after the pool stages, which has an impact on your home advantage in the element. So there is also a statistical component. It's the toughest and most beautiful club competition in the world, and you have to go deep. You have to go with your best squad. And win the bonus point. Look at the controversy in Toulouse and not having gotten the bonus point going down to play the Sharks, and now they're for the first time not in the top 4 but 5th in the ranking. Look at so it applies to all teams, even the very best.
Yeah. Dom, South Africa's on the cusp of becoming fully fledged members of the competition. Do you think that's going to alleviate some of the logistical, financial restraints that may influence squad depth in South Africa, which kind of reveals itself, manifests itself in some second-string teams being fielded overseas? I'm assuming that once we're in a position where our squads are maybe a little bit bigger, we may see stronger teams fielded in the competition?
Look, I think you've got incredibly strong teams already. So look, if you're going to tell me you're going to get even stronger again, that's going to send chills into the Northern Hemisphere. I think the quality of players that you have just now, the coaching that you have, the facilities you have. I've had the privilege to be to South Africa a few times with teams over the years, Scotland, and as Jacques mentioned, coming down to see the club games. What you have down here is an incredible rugby environment. It is the envy of the world in many respects. So if you're telling me you're going to get even stronger, that can only be great for the competition. And you mentioned South Africa being a deeper part of our family. We couldn't be more proud to have South Africa as part of the Investec Champions Cup and the EPCR Challenge Cup. The contribution that you have made from a sporting point of view has been incredible. The contribution you've made from a cultural point of view is equally important to me. I often talk about the importance of the values of rugby, the idea that this sport is more than just the 80 minutes on the field. It's about everything that wraps around. It's the values of the game. And that's best expressed, I think, often by the transport and the movement of fans and travel. So when I had the joy of going to various games this season, I've seen travelling supporters, whether it's Glasgow supporters flying down to the south of France, South African supporters flying up to London. Yeah. It is outstanding, and that is something which we as a sport should be very protective of. It's our unique selling point, perhaps over other sports. And that idea of cultural exchanges, opportunities for the players to challenge themselves in a different hemisphere, sometimes altitude, is a wonderful experience for a player and for a coach, and for referees. We often forget about the importance of developing our referees. This competition, because it's the pinnacle of the club game, also tests referees in different environments. And again, that's great for our sport. There's a lot of wonderful things that happen around our sport, a lot of challenges, of course we have, but we've got something unique, which is the rugby values. And that's best expressed, I think, through our competitions and the movement of people that we create.
Jacques, if you're the money man, okay? So, you talk about the addition that South Africa is, Dom, to the competition. I mean, like, we are thrilled that we're in that competition. You speak to our coaches, they acknowledge how hard it is, but they wouldn't be anywhere else. They want to test themselves against the best. If you look at from a broadcasting perspective, Jacques, and your history is Sky Italia, Sky Deutschland, first the differences coming into the rugby environment, and then two, the potency of someone like SuperSport as a broadcaster, and then the rugby fraternity in South Africa. If you can kind of educate us a bit in terms of the value of South Africa in the evolution of the Champions Cup, which is no longer the European Cup. It is a global competition by virtue of South Africa entry there.
Yeah. So, I used to produce and buy, I was on the other side, the Investec Champions Cup or the Rugby World Cup or what was then the Pro 14 and became the URC. So, indeed, I do have a perspective, maybe a biased one, but I do have a perspective. So I can tell you the quality of the production that is of the Investec Champions Cup is world class. If you look at the finals in Tottenham, if you look at the pool stages or the knockout stages, the number of cameras, the technology, the drones, the spider cams, this is production at world class, best in class level. So I'm very proud of that, and we've done a lot. When you look at the graphics, when you look at the whole broadcast package, it's very good, really world class. The second element is you've got a fantastic host broadcaster, a home broadcaster, SuperSport. They are top level. We were watching even varsity rugby last evening here, and this is kind of top broadcast level. So you've got a culture of production values, as we say in our jargon, which is very high. And SuperSport is not only producing for SuperSport; it's producing a world feed when you're hosting in South Africa. So we benefit from this kind of high production standards to the entire world. This signal is then brought to 26 broadcasters around the world, roughly 100 countries, roughly 75 million spectators per season. So it is a massive commitment from television broadcasters in South Africa, Ireland, UK, France, Italy, Georgia, and to commit those 114 matches to 75 million elements. But you're being well taken care of, and your rugby culture has led to production values of the highest standards that I can see. And actually, we're meeting them tomorrow to thank them and to encourage them to go further, because they're quite innovative. They're quite they know their rugby.
Of course they do.
They've got very good producers, very good directors. So we're enjoying a very healthy relationship, very respectful. But we also think they've raised the bar overall.
Jacques, what's the future of the competition? Where is it going? And where does the Rugby Club World Cup fit into those plans?
So, the chairman would say the first thing is to constantly improve the current formats and the current competition. So the Investec Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup. So we've done, the South African integration or participation, as you call it, has been a success and will continue to be a success. And we need to continue that success. We're quite pleased with the inclusion of Georgia. The franchise, the Black Lions, is the backbone of the national Georgian team now. They're ranked 12th, 11th, depending on the Rugby World Cup rankings. I didn't say. We've got 4 Welsh teams in the EPCR Challenge Cup, and they're all vying for the final in Cardiff. So beware. This is also a very important point, and we had a presentation, just as we had a presentation from the Hollywood Bit Sharks on their road to win the EPCR Challenge Cup at our club conference last year. We had a very interesting presentation from the Black Lions, who just demonstrated how a locally based franchise playing the next level, which is the EPCR Challenge Cup for them, has reduced the points or the point difference in the international game.
Sure.
So that is the second success. So continuing to work on the sporting financial success, because we're in the business of getting additional resources back into the club game, is our first priority. I think our second priority is we've been working for years on the project called a Club World Cup. The chairman would say there's warmth to it, there's an appetite, but it's a complex project. So we're still working on it. We're all passionate about it, but we're also very cold-minded when it comes to finances and logistics. So it needs to work from as you say, player welfare perspective, financial perspective, and commercial perspective. So we're trying to put this.
But you just have to add the Crusaders, and then you've got the point.
As Jacques says, we're really passionate about exploring how to deliver for the fans and for the players. Yeah. That's the most important thing. If we deliver for the fans and the players, whatever that is, then the rest should happen, right? And a lot of the feedback that we get from the externals, who would be the greatest club in the world? Who would be crowned the Club World Cup champion? So we've taken that challenge on, as Jacques mentions there, over the last couple of years to try and see if we can develop some thoughts, some ideas around developing a Club World Cup. There's lots more work to be done on that, but we're having great discussions with our friends in the Southern Hemisphere, because it'd be nice to find a way of demonstrating that, because I think there's a desire from the broadcasters, desire from the players, desire from the supporters to see once and for all who that might be. But doing that in a crowded calendar, doing that in a busy rugby environment isn't without its challenges, but we're chopping as much wood as we can to explore the project, and then we'll see where that takes us.
Is there a timeline pre-2030, post-2030 that people can potentially look forward to, that it's a formalised best of the South plays the best of the North?
Yeah, I think we're probably on record as talking about we'd like to do something, if we can, in 2028. There is never a perfect time to do changes in rugby, but we're thinking about 2028 as a possibility if those other elements that Jacques mentioned can be lined up. But our core focus is really to your question, which is how do we make sure the current structure within the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup is as good as it can be for the supporters and the players. And it's possible we'll do some more innovations around the tournament to make that even stronger and better. There's a big educational piece I think we still have to do in South Africa to make sure that the love affair for the Champions Cup that we have in the Northern Hemisphere is the same in the Southern Hemisphere. So that's our real primary focus, making the competition as strong as it can be for the next 30 years. Having 30 years of great heritage is something we're protective of and proud of, but we've got to make sure that we build appropriately into the next number of years.
Dom, you talked about innovation and chopping wood, and whether any cross-hemisphere competition, whether it's Champions Cup or Club Rugby World Cup, is going to involve the logistics of the geography. Is a change in the calendar something that is realistic? Can it be achieved? Was it something you guys are working on? Is that part of the innovation, or are you limited to working within the framework you have right now?
Do you know, we currently have a framework that we all collectively work within, but it'd be fair to say there is, I think, an awareness within World Rugby, an awareness within the international game, an awareness across the leagues, and we represent three leagues, that we need to keep looking at that global calendar to make sure it's delivering the best value for the players and for the fans. And at the moment, there's elements of that calendar that I think personally could be improved for the benefit of the players and for the fans. So that's an area of discussion that we are engaged with World Rugby, with the unions, with our leagues, to try and see if we can improve that in the future. We hosted the second EPCR club conference in London this year at Investec's headquarters. And we brought together our 42 clubs, our 3 leagues, our 8 unions and World Rugby. So we got all together, which is a dangerous thing to have all those rugby people in one building at the same time, because anything could happen. But it was a great discussion. And one of the elements of that discussion was, how do we make sure the sport, the professional game, constantly delivers for the fans and for the players, and then thereafter broadcasters and sponsors. But if we can't deliver for the players and the fans, we're not working hard enough. So there's a great discussion around that, and calendar is a critical component to that, particularly when we operate in a global environment. If we want to have the hemispheres efficiently working for rugby, then that global calendar, I think, could do with being evolved a little bit.
Jacques, if you look at from a broadcasting perspective, I mean, that's where the money is. The commercials, without the commercial sustainability, there is no competition, there is no sport, basically. South Africa's addition, and from what we read in the media reports down here, into the ERC, there was an immediate acceptance that had to evolve. Then Champions Cup, France, England had to kind of agree to it, that there was a lot of goodwill to getting the South African teams in. Also understanding there would be teething problems with the travel, coming down just for one match, going back. It's a double question. The first one is, looking at, and a lot of players have spoken about that, trying to work a structure where they come down and play 2 matches, say Champions Cup or Challenge Cup, and then go back into their domestic competition, so it's not just a one-off hit. And then also, have you seen the tangible benefits commercially from South Africa's involvement, even though it's only been limited for the last 2 years?
So let me answer the second question first. We definitely have seen a spark and shine increasing for the, even though it's already a prestigious tournament for 30 years, increasing through South Africa. This is definitely because, you basically have other countries with the franchises having the Springboks and the world champions. So that is an elevation, or perceived as such, and we've seen it and we've monetized it, in particular with sponsorship money. We've doubled our sponsorship in 2 years, not because of South Africa, but South Africa has helped in getting us new global blue chip brands that have a look beyond the rugby core markets of UK and France as it was before. So this is definitely the increased footprint from a commercial perspective, and from a TV element. The fact that the South Africans are included has increased the number of TV broadcasters, the so-called international takers, to 26, now delivering into 100. So yes, a geographic expansion does have positive commercial outcome, and I can confirm that. Definitely on sponsorship, definitely on TV, whether it's quantity or quality.
And looking at player, we talk player welfare, and I mean, player welfare can be in the definition of player welfare. And when things are going well, no one complains about player welfare. The moment a team struggles, it is player welfare. Or there's kind of an excuse. As you continue to, Dom, refine the competition and you look at the two structures, like you say, not only are you balancing a premiership, a top 14 and a URC, you're also balancing a Challenge Cup and a Champions Cup. And a lot of who goes into the Challenge Cup is dependent on what happens in the Champions Cup. How difficult is that a process? And then kind of where do you see it leaning towards? Will we see potentially a Challenge Cup that maybe has less teams in it, or a different structure? Is that something you're constantly looking at evolving, or is the current structure the way it's going to be?
Yeah, and so the current structure is the way it's going to be until it's not. So we're constantly looking at how do we improve for the fans and for the players and for the clubs. How do we deliver for all three of those constantly? So we have a fantastic collaboration with our leagues. On my board, I have the 3 chief executives of each of the leagues. So embedded in our decision making and our evolution of the tournament are the leagues, along with our unions that also sit on the board as well, representing the 8 unions across our family of international federations. So the conversation we have is always about rugby, always about how we improve things, and then we sort of leave the finance to the team to deliver off the back of the structures that we put in place. Rugby cannot stand still anywhere in rugby. We need to evolve and to improve, whether that's in fixtures, whether that's in format, whether that's in presentation. We are in the entertainment business, and we've got to sell ourselves effectively, not against each other in rugby, against other sports and other activities that young people are perhaps being diverted towards. So we've got to work really hard to make sure that the competitions that we steward and look after, the story that's wrapped around those competitions, are as effective as it possibly can be. So I think we collectively as rugby need to keep upping our game, keep telling great stories, keep exposing these wonderful athletes and allowing them the opportunity to be the best ambassadors they can be to promote our game. And with that, we will bring growing audiences. And I think that's part of the reason why Jacques and the team have been so pleased with moving to South Africa, is welcomed a new South African audience into the Champions Cup and into the Challenge Cup. We've also moved into Georgia, brought in a new audience into the environment as a consequence of Georgia. Rugby needs to evolve. It cannot stand still if it wants to continue to be as wonderfully relevant in the next generation. And we're committed at EPCR in running the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup to constantly look at improvements that we can make for the players, for the fans and for the clubs.
But with the economic imbalance that there is because of the weakness of the rand in South Africa, is it ever a possibility that a South African venue, particularly Cape Town, our own
Great question.
great stadium,
Great question.
Cape Town, one of the tourism meccas of world, that they could ever host a Investec Champions Cup final or EPCR final, that double header? Is it a possibility, or is the commercial reality just like South Africa and New Zealand will probably never get another World Cup? Is it just that it comes down to cost?
So let me answer part of it. So we do have one of the fantastic elements of 30 years of Investec Champions Cup and EPCR Challenge Cup is the so-called destination final. So we try to have a final which is a destination final, not a home final, not the always at the same place final. And this is grown into this fierce bidding from around the world to host those finals. Last round of bidding, and we will be announcing 27 next April, next month. There has been 22 bidders. Okay, so it is a world bidding affair to host the finals. So we're very privileged, but this renders it quite tough in certain countries. The second element, despite this interest, the chair and the board have asked us to rotate between core territories, new territories, and new venues. Okay, so there is a balance to be found between a destination final, which is a core territory, a destination final, which is a new territory, and a never been before destination. And this is the balance. As part of the never been before and maybe future core territory, you do have South Africa. Okay, how do we get? It's roughly it's 150,000 people. So, and they're not 75 are travelers. Okay, when you go into the last statistics of Marseille, Dublin, and London, so you need to have the logistics, the hotels, the elements. I'm personally sure that if you put the world final in Cape Town, you'll have but or South Africa in general. But we need to make it work from a logistics point of view. It has to be fan friendly. Okay, and again, 75% are outside travelers. We need to make it work for club rugby. It is a major contributor to the finances of the EPCR, and EPCR is all about getting additional resources back into the club system. So it is this balance between the destination, the finances, and the fan travel element, and we need to get right. We are talking to a number of destinations, including this destination, but it's a world element.
So we're still on the radar in Cape Town.
Look,
there is hope.
We'd love to have a final in Cape Town. It just needs to work for us from a financial point of view and from a fan point of view. We don't place our finals in locations that we don't believe will be a huge success. And the last thing we would want would be to place a final in Cape Town too soon, So the most important thing for us, I think, as part of our journey with South Africa, is to make sure that love affair that we have in the north of the Champions Cup is embedded in South Africa. And that allows the platform, the confidence perhaps from colleagues in SARU and colleagues in Cape Town Mayor's office to be really committed to hosting a great final. I have no doubt a final here will be a huge success. The timing of that, we just need to work on together.
Jacques, last question from me. Obviously, the exposure to EPCR rugby is raising the standard in South Africa. When the Springboks go to France in November and win, you take any responsibility for that result?
Swiss neutral. We're based out of Lausanne. There is a reason, Swiss neutrality.
Well, I did see a Toulon jacket somewhere. I've got a question for you, Dom. And I get a lot of inquiries about this. And for El Presidente, when we chat to him, is the Cheetahs. They are the most loved team in South Africa. It's everyone's second favorite team, unless you can bring with that it's your favorite team. They played out of Amsterdam. There was a lot of good support for them there. They're designed to play out of Bloemfontein. Just as an educational tool, can you explain to our audience why they were invited in, why they had to play out of Europe, why they couldn't play out of South Africa, and could that change in the future?
Well, it was really, firstly, a huge congratulations to the Cheetahs, because there'll be very few clubs in the world that have undertaken such a challenge to play their home games in another country, in another hemisphere. So my hat's off, and I've said this to them directly, and I'll say this to them again tomorrow when I see them. They've done an incredible job for promoting the values of our sport, taking a challenge and running with it. And they've done a great job playing up in Amsterdam. Such a good job, they had to build new stands in the venue because they were selling. So there's a lovely story there. It's an unusual story because it happened through unusual circumstances, and they delivered against those circumstances and have delivered really, really well. We will look forward to a conversation with them tomorrow, a conversation with our friends at SARU, and try and make sure we've got the right plan for the South African clubs in the future. But I would just like to say, a huge credit to them for what they've achieved in the last few years, because it's remarkable. There's a great story there that I think needs to be told about the embracing of a challenge and delivering it beautifully.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up. You bought the rain to Cape Town just for a day. Thanks. So you'll be going up the mountain tomorrow. You talk about expansion into South Africa, the education of the South African passionate rugby audience, understanding the lure of the star, chasing the star. I love that. We have chasing the sun, and it's bad for us.
Okay.
But chasing the star, and I guess you've got to win one to want to chase the second one.
Yeah.
Just briefly, from both of you, what are you doing to instill that footprint into South Africa and into the South African rugby mindset at every level? I know your digital expansion is one of your big factors, but if you can kind of just summarize it in lay terms for our audience.
So last year when we toured, we decided to put out a South African marketing group, which included SARU, the franchises, Investec, and some of the media. And we developed the concept Chasing the Stars. It used to be the one to win for Europe, and it's become, thanks to South African input, Chasing the Stars. So we've changed our motto. The second element is we have worked very hard on 10 stars coming down to South Africa. It was Toulon with 3, it was Saris with 1, and it was Toulouse with 6. And then we've worked very hard on making stadium attendance grow. We're now at 23,000 plus for the Stormers. We're above 12,000 for the Bulls. We've consistently increased this. And this is the result of the marketing group, which is, again, Investec doing a lot, SARU putting all its expertise, the clubs, thinking out of the box, including playing in Port Elizabeth. So this is what we're doing. And then the digital component, the fan engagement, is beyond the work that SuperSport is doing on TV, is also what we're doing on digital. 20% of our digital audience is now from South Africa. So this is, to wrap it up, it's a success story for us that we want to build on. And it was really hard work from all the stakeholders from South Africa to get this. But you cannot buy time. We need a bit of time, but we're doing the right things with the franchises, with SARU, with the different various teams and stakeholders.
The two comments just to build on Jacques' summary there, which was perfect, is the support we get from SuperSport. SuperSport is our host broadcaster in South Africa and tells a story brilliantly and has brought to life the competition beautifully. and we look forward to that continuing for many years. And then, of course, having SARu's support. SARu are integral in everything that we do in South Africa, and I think that idea of rugby working in partnership, in true collaborative partnership, as we do with URC, as we do with SARu, as we do with the clubs, that allows the conversation to be lifted and raised and the education to be embedded a bit more. So my thanks really to the clubs, my thanks to SARu, my thanks to SuperSport, my thanks for the warmth of the welcome that we've had from yourselves and from the media. We know this is an incredible competition, but with your work and with SARu's work and the SuperSport's work, more and more people will get to see this incredible competition come to life.
And chase the stars.
And what we'll do is we'll get hold of the mayor's office. We'll get hold of and we need a premier and whoever else to win Toulon. The Stormers in a final.
All right. Okay. That'll be a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you very
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're still at the Cullinan Hotel. We've been moved. Zels, that was a very interesting chat. The good thing is Cape Town's not off the radar for a final. I mean, it's some years in the making, but if there was ever going to be a destination for a Champions Cup final that didn't involve a South African team, it would have to be the city of love, the mother city, Cape Town. But great chat to Dom and Jacques. Good to know that they are meeting with the Cheetahs as well this week. Our beloved Cheetahs. But yeah, encouraging, because some of the reports that have come out, is there a future for South Africa in the Champions Cup? Definitely. I mean, we're there, and we're there to stay.
Yeah, and just great to see the passion that these guys have for this competition. It's not two guys just sitting on their laurels, sort of sticking with the status quo. Two guys really excited about the EPCR competitions and eager to evolve them and innovate them, and especially excited about South Africa's involvement in the competition, what we've added, what our teams have added. So, I mean, very open to discussing the innovation in the competition going forward, where there may or may not be changes, and their hopes to grow it, specifically South Africa's interest in the comp. And I'm sure that's going to come with time. The more we play these teams and get to know them, I'm sure the interest is going to climb.
It will come, and I mean, even just the way they explained when I said the confusion is if two URC teams are in the same pool, they don't play each other. He said it's to show it's a different tournament.
Yeah.
So you protect the status of the URC in this example, where you protect the status of the top 14 or the Premiership. And it's to get that variety of coming into South Africa and then leaving. Interesting point that Dom made though. If you want to win this competition, you've got to play your best team in those leagues. Home or away, you've got to say this is the one. And I think the mentality that we've got to change in South Africa is that the one that's in Europe, it's the Champions Cup, the Investec Champions Cup. And if you do falter there, the EPCR Challenge Cup becomes a big one. Chasing the stars, I love that concept. We know that Toulouse have got 6 stars. They are the Crusaders of the North. Leinster, they've got the 5 stars. I would say they're the Bulls of the North, if you go back to old Super Rugby days. But and then Toulon, who would they be? The Stormers of the North. 3 stars that they've got, with pretty much 7 South Africans who did the business. But there is so much history. We spoke about it in the interview with them. We've always loved the competition. I think the apprehension at the moment is that some of our teams have struggled with not sending their strongest squads while they're trying to balance the two competitions. But it's great to know that South Africa has had such a positive impact, not just from a broadcast point of view, from a commercial point of view, but that the fans in France, the fans in the UK, Ireland, in Europe, they want the South African teams, and they want to see the Springboks play in those competitions, and they want to see them playing club colours and not necessarily be playing as the Springboks.
No, totally. And it's, like you say, very encouraging that the interest is there, not only in South Africa, but also in Europe. Talking about the rotation of the squad, Jacques was telling me how the South African teams are using the most players in the competition, where the European teams pretty much stick with their strongest side the whole way through. And I think a lot of that has got to do with the financials and the geography of this competition, specifically for South African teams, because if you're a team in France and you play an Irish team, it's a hop, skip and a jump to go and play them. For us, there's a big difference between traveling from Cape Town to Paris, Cape Town to Dublin. That's a long way to go. So I think in time, when South Africa becomes fully fledged members of this competition and the finances are maybe there, it's not so much that we'll have bigger squads in terms of numbers, but the quality and depth, I think, will improve. And I think that will allow us to pick stronger teams and be stronger in this competition while still waging warfare in the URC at the same time. So exciting times ahead.
But if you take, let's look at Toulouse and Leinster as the classic examples. They've been the most successful teams. 11 stars between them, or 10 stars between them, or 11. Or that's,
Leicester's chasing fifth.
Leicester's chasing 5. So they've got 4. So I've already given them that extra star. Maybe they're going to get it. They've won it already. Okay, they're definitely going to win it this year. They're going to win the double this year. Okay, they have to. They've been chasing it for 4 years. The Stars and the URC title. But if you look at those two teams, you see they put everything into those league games to finish top of their pool. And they kind of know the top 14 and they know the URC respectively. They feel they've got enough depth to either win or to kind of get a losing bonus points, but to be in there to know when their full strength squad comes back, they can still make a playoff and win home or away. Where we've tried to balance both from the beginning. And the minute we drop a home game, we think, oh, that's the end of us. We'll send the B team overseas and take 50 points. Where maybe the mentality is you've got to give it a full tonk and try and win 3 out of those 4 games, get into the Champions Cup, and back yourself, if you drop a game in the URC, to make that up in the latter stages. Because we've seen in this year's URC, we're going to get to URC just now, this weekend's games, we've seen that, we've said from the beginning, that 10 out of 18 wins probably get you into the playoff, which is consistent with all those top Northern Hemisphere competitions. We saw in top 14, 16 out of 26. The great Toulon side that did the treble when it came to Investec Champions Cup, won top 14. That star-studded side won on average 16, 17 out of 26 league games a season. So it's also an educational thing to our guys. This isn't the old Currie Cup, the old Super 12, where it's played 11, won 8, played 8, won 6, and you're in there. This is getting to playoff stage.
It's a campaign.
And balancing it. Yeah. And it's like you look at the American sports and basketball teams on the road, they lose a lot. But do they get to those playoffs? Yes. And do they peak in those playoff stages? So I love the interview with Dom and Jacques, that they were open. Love the fact that there's so much goodwill towards South Africa, that there is expansions coming, that it's not that South Africa in any guise is off the radar because of commercial aspects when it comes to a neutral ground. And it would be fantastic, as I said, that on the year that they potentially give Cape Town a final for the double header, that there are 2 South African teams, one in the EPCR Challenge final and one in the Champions Cup final. That would be written in the stars, chasing the stars. Yeah.
That'd be glorious for South
Africa. Yeah. What else would you take from that? I mean, because it's an ongoing process, and we have to educate our public about. We are playing in the best club competition in the world.
Yeah, well, it's the only competition that really involves so many diverse cultures, doesn't it? Because it's got all the European teams plus the South African sides. Obviously, the URC doesn't have teams from England in it, the Premiership. So it's the best teams from each of the leagues in the world competing in a very arduous and cutthroat, in a way, competition format, right? Because you don't have a lot of time to get your points in before it's playoffs. So it really is a very difficult competition to win. And especially for the South African sides that are just coming to grips with the travel factor and some of the sort of requirements to also be competing in the URC at the same time. So
it is, there's no gimmies here.
None.
There's no one place 16 and
it's no Dragons, mate.
Well, not at the moment. There's no Dragons, and I'll tell you, even the Dragons, and we saw that. They came close to beating Ulster at home. So any team playing at home in this competition, it's hell of a hard, and because of the seasonal changes, you'll be playing in -2 degrees up north, and you come down here and you're playing 30 degrees. And it's a flight that people say, yeah, it's overnight, and there's not much in terms of time change. But it's still a hell of a demanding, it's hell of a tough, but because it's so weighted in terms of strength, and I think we should just be embracing it, celebrating. And also I think the context and the perspective that we got from the chairman and from the CEO was, hell guys, you've only been in this competition for your 3rd season. You've already won one of the 2. You were in the you've made quarterfinal stages of the other ones, and in the URC you won in the 1st year, and you've hosted 2 losing finals in the 2nd year. Geez, you guys should be applauding yourselves in South Africa, not being hard on yourselves, because it's taken other teams. Some teams in 30 years have never won it. And you take the very golden generation of Leinster. They won it for the first time in 2009, I think it was, the 9-10 season. And Johnny Sexton had said It took them a good decade to build that squad that could win that and also be successful in pro rugby, as it was then called. And the Toulouse side as well. You know, they went on that run. They got 4, I think, and then there was a drop-off. Then they won the one. There was a slight drop-off. And then they did incredible to do the double last year and on track to potentially do the double again, unless Leinster take them. But that's going to be great again.
Also exciting for them to be talking about the Rugby Club World Cup and the potential for that to come on the scene in the next couple of years. Just what that might mean, finding out who is the best club in world rugby.
But again, it goes, if you talk about a global club season, and not everyone gets to play Test rugby, not everyone gets to play in a rugby championship, a Six Nations, India Tour, and the World Cup, and a Nations Cup that's still coming to the fore. So your level may just be club rugby, but then it's exposed to a global audience. So if you take in the best of the North, the best of the South, you kind of make sure that there is an element of, be it Fiji or Samoa or Tonga, and then obviously in Japan, maybe something from the States in their professional leagues. Everyone then is involved. Argentina, let's not forget them, although most of them are playing in France now, but those players. But if you have a system where you've got to qualify, in our case through the URC, to get into the Champions Cup, then once in the Champions Cup, you've got to qualify to get into the World Club Championship. Yeah. It's just such a great kind of next step. And then,
it's a pathway.
And then you look at the end of the year and you can say with authority, we are the club champions of the world. I mean, that is a massive thing from a commercial sponsorship point of view, from a broadcast point of view. And just to say, in 2029, we are the best club in the world, confirmed. And yeah, I mean, Dobbo, Stormers, Jake, Bulls, Plum, Cash, France staying at the Cheetahs, coming through the back leg. Lots to play for, eh?
No, hell of a lot to play for, and exciting times, really is. Not only for South African rugby, but rugby on the whole.
All right, exciting times for this weekend. Last weekend we said, 4 for 4, par favor. Wat gaan het weer, Zels?
We've got some interesting games. I don't know. Some tight calls there, some not so much. Friday night, Ulster hosting the Stormers.
Sure, Belfast, that could be a banana peel, 4G pitch. The last time they were there, the Stormers didn't go too well. They're a better side now. Ulster have been struggling, although they'll take something from getting that win against the Dragons on the road. Important one, though, to get another one pre this break for the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup, and then into that home run that they've got. I'm not as bullish about the Stormers this weekend, so I'm only going to give it to them by 12 points.
You're all bullish in me, mate. I say the Stormers are going to win. The Flair boys are back. They've got their groove back, and I've tipped the Stormers to have a strong finish to the season. They're going to have a 2-win tour, but they're going to sneak this one by 3 points.
All right, you got 3 points. We know Branners is not there. I kind of took a bit of forced time out, a bit of a concussion there. That guy just keeps on bouncing back, okay? Priming him for the playoffs. I've got the Stormers to win this one at 28-16.
Yeah, I'm not.
I had to do my math there for 12 points.
I'll take a 24-21 victory for the Stormers.
All right, and then our next ones are?
We've got afternoon matches. The Bulls are hosting Zebre. I think that's called into 3 kickoff at Loftus Versfeld. Zebre coming off a very, very, very close loss to the Sharks in Durbs.
That's prime for a 44-30 for the Bulls. Lots of tries.
I'm more bullish than you in this case. I think the Bulls win this one by 20 points. I'm going to say the Bulls 38-18.
Yeah, I've got them by 14 points, but in a high-scoring game. I think you're going to get, it's going to be a bit like basketball. You score, we score. Bulls score 2 quick ones, a penalty, you score, and the Bulls come back handing on at the end. Zebre to finish the strongest side, as everyone does at Loftus. That's not from Pretoria. But the Bulls to win a consolidated position in the top 4, and the bun fight continues at the bottom. A Zebre loss also then drops them back a bit more. I'm thinking very parochially. I'm thinking, how does it fit for the Lions? How does it fit for the Stormers? And the Sharks and the Bulls continue in their top 4. The top 4 to me should stay the same way it is now. The big fight, as we said, from 5 down to 15. Dragons are out of it. But 1 or 2 losses from those teams just gives the Stormers, particularly with their draw, more so than the Lions, it gives them that little bit of leeway to basically step into that 5 positions, 5 to 8.
5 to 8, mate.
Okay. So ons sê die bulle gaan wen.
Yeah, we both did. I said
20 punte.
You said 14.
14 vir my.
Go ahead.
My hoed is by die huis. Someone said to me, like, Ja, maar je praat ons soos flip en je is van die Westkust af en je praat so 'n bietjie van Mansberg. Dis nie ons praat in Pretoria. Ek weet julle praat nie so nie in Pretoria. Julle sit op die hek. Ons sit op
English is your second language.
julle sit op die hek, ons sit op die hek in die Kaap. So ek weet dit is nie hoe julle praat nie. Maar ons vrou op die plaas, hy praat so en hy sê the Bulls is going to take this one and Stormers is going to win with Dobbo. Die lose.
We got to go, not the Lions yet. We got to Durban, mate. It's Kings Park, a little team called Leinster. Go down to the East Coast.
Ek het al my vriends gesê, these Leinster guys is not bad. Maar die Sharks, want hulle is eintlik Afrikaans.
Yeah, apparently so, mate.
There's more Afrikaans guys in that team than English, man. Die Haie.
Yes.
Die Haie gaan wen.
You're stalling, mate. Give me the numbers.
Die Haie gaan wen en hulle gaan wen 27-20. 7 punte. 27-20.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. I had the Sharks to win this one by 8 points. I was going to say 30-22, but very close on the score.
I got the Sharkies to win, and Leinster are a good side. It's great to see Achius Snowman here. To me, he is just one of the best. And I mean, especially in the club stream. Imagine that guy in Super Rugby now.
He'd be cooking.
Huh?
He would be cooking.
Keo Williams, Sonny Bull Williams. I mean, he is the Sonny Bull of forward play. Imagine him and Sonny Bull. You could start a counter attack from your own 22. You take 14 guys out just for the taking contact and offload. You just want to play. You want to play on the wing there, or you want to just run that perfect line just on the inside next to some fat prop. Shook straight through.
Okay, so the Sharks to win in Durban against Leinster, the log leaders. Then
the log leaders. I like that. The log leaders. They've just lost one. Just remember, guys, and we did mention this in the show earlier this week, the Bulls, 25-20 in the semi-final last year of the URC, 21-20 this time in the league match. They are the only team to have beaten a Leinster side that went 16 matches unbeaten in between competitions.
Yes. Okay, so we've got the Lions on Saturday night at Glasgow.
Ja, jy sê nou Zels, dit gaan nie goed gaan nie. Ek het nou met Franco gepraat en ek het nou met Kyle gepraat en luister vir my. Hulle gaan van die Lions 'n pak slag gee.
Really?
Yeah, the Lions are going to be lacking. They're going to lose 33-17, 16 points. It's going to be a comfortable win for Glasgow. And unfortunately, the Lions are going to have to rely on that 4 stretch at home. It's a tough game. Glasgow are second on the log for people who don't know. They're going to have all their internationals back. It's not going to be easy. The one they should have won, the Lions, was last week. They lost it by 3. They lost to the Sharks by 3. Hulle gaan 'n pak slaag kry. We're not going to see die Lulu this weekend.
I'm going to call this one with my heart. I do think Glasgow are deserved favourites, but I've got a feeling about the Lions. Whenever I back them, it doesn't go well. But I'm going to put the curse back on them. I'm going to say the Lions beat Glasgow by 2 points at Glasgow, do the Stormers a huge favour, and potentially shake up the top 4 rankings there.
Well, you can't follow that.